Okay, today, what I'm going to do today, and what I want to work with you to do, to think a little more about how to read an academic journal article. Okay, we had a great discussion in class Thursday, and I'm making this video to clarify a few points. Okay, why do we read these academic journal articles? We can't just go with our gut or what makes sense or what we know from our personal experience. Why we read academic journal articles, okay, is to ground anything that we may find in the actual trends or patterns that exist somewhere in the world. Okay, we're never going to actually truly ever going to be able to know completely whether or not such a pattern is 100% certain. That's not our goal here. But we can get to a scientific estimate, okay? So for a moment, let's go, I want to move over here. I'll move the screen over here, move me over there. And we're going to look at this assignment. This assignment is due on the 22nd of September. And it's parents' relationship and children's behavior in stable married and cohabitating families. This is the first part one of two videos we're going to make. And this is an extensive two-part assignment. The second part of this assignment, you're going to review two journal articles using what's called an annotated bibliography. We'll go over that later. But for now, let's read this article. First thing that you're asked to do is to identify the type of research used in this study. So let me move back over here and let's take a look. Okay, one thing you want to know about academic journal articles, they're always going to give you something called an abstract, right? Where this piece here at the beginning, it's sometimes in italics or bold print, right? It tells you, gives you a thumbnail description of the research. So if we read this down here, you're going to see a lot of language that perhaps you're not familiar with, okay? Don't worry about, I know what structural equation models cross-lagged are, and I also know what latent growth curve and fixed effect models are. Don't worry about that. You're going to see language here, right? But what this language means is that they're using a comparatively rigorous statistical technique to assess the degree to which what they are asserting is correct, okay? So what kind of sampling do they use? Okay, it says Fragile Families and Child Well-Being Study. This number N quite simply means number, and it's the number of families that were in the study, in this case 773. Okay, we know that examines couple supportiveness in stable co-resident families. A stable co-resident family is a family of marriage or a family where a couple lives together. And it talks about children's externalizing and internalizing behavior problems. They found the parents' greater supportiveness had a slight association with lower levels of children's behavioral problems. We're not concerned about that person you know who spoils their kid. They don't matter. What matters here is a trend. Is this a trend? This kind of research is going to go against something you may know from your personal observation of the world. I'm not here to destroy your personal truth, but that's not what we're talking about in this kind of sociology, which is empirically based, hypothesis-driven social analysis, okay? So let's go down here and look. So we know here that this is not stated explicitly but you have 773 people in this study, we know probably that it's going to be a survey. So let's go. Let's get down and read through this, okay? The next part of this, the first thing that they do is they treat the entire literature, research literature, okay, that assesses this problem or this relationship. One dimension of children's well-being that may be particularly affected by the quality of their parents' relationship is their behavior. Notice I said maybe. Not all cases, not what they know, not what they know personally, but what's known from rigorous academic research. And or couples' relationship quality may affect the quality of parent-child interactions. Greater behavioral problems during childhood have been linked to a range of adverse outcomes later in life, including odds of completing high school and attending college, unemployment, etc. Okay, I don't want to scan now. And higher odds of mental health problems and criminal behavior. So what they're saying is that the research indicates or tends to indicate trends that when people come from unstable parental connections and relationships, it increases problems. Okay. Background. They look at theoretical perspectives. The first one we talked about earlier, family systems theory. Okay. Then they talk about social exchange theory. We talked about that. Okay. Parents' relationships with quality may affect children directly or indirectly. I'm giving this a very quick read. Okay. Parents' relationship, during middle relationship and quality of children may vary over the course of children's development. So they're assessing two theories here, family systems theory and social exchange theory, and looking at the evidence. Then they move down here to empirical findings in their literature review. Okay, there's a large body of literature in the fields of psychology and child development that examines a parent's relationship and how it is linked to children's well-being. Usually they talk about negative relationship. Here we're talking positive. Okay, again, they're reinforcing this kind of point. Parental conflict has been cited as an explanation for the effects of divorce and family instability on children. In other words, marital dissolution is associated with diminished child well-being, in part because of high levels of conflict. Okay, note what this doesn't say here. Okay, and this goes back to our reading of Cherlin. Okay, it doesn't say all divorces are going to cause diminished child well-being. In fact, if the divorce is amicable or people just are friendly and they maintain a sort of parental unified front for the child, I'm not going to say that it's not going to affect them at all, but it's probably going to minimize the effect. That's another question, another possible hypothesis, right? Fewer studies have examined the association between positive aspects of parents' relationships. That's what we're looking at. Okay? And then they give you a critique. Many such studies use data on small, non-representative samples and do not include data across multiple time points. Okay, let's look at what this means critically. A sample means that your sample should somehow, as best as you can do it, look like a population on which you're drawing from. That would be parents, okay, and children, okay? So a non-representative sample, they're saying, doesn't do that. It doesn't represent a larger population. The numbers are small, and we can talk about what small means, right? Means that they don't have enough families in the sample to make any kind of inference, any kind of assertion scientifically parental cohesion and well-being of the children. Also, they don't include data across multiple time points. This is key. You can't just go in and survey parents and families one time and go, oh, okay. You have to look at them at different points over time. That's why this research is very difficult to do. Questions also remain about the causal nature of the association between couple relationship quality and child behavior. It is possible that social selection affect them both. That, you know, it's essential to control for variables that may be related. To control means to hold constant. You know, race, marital status, age, income, employment, physical and mental health. Okay. It's also important to consider that the nature of the association between relationship quality and children's behavior may be bidirectional. What does that mean? That means that family systems theory emphasizes the dynamic and reciprocal nature of effects. Prior research has typically assumed that parents influence. The children may influence the parents to act correctly. That's what this is saying. Okay? Or children can also affect parents. For example, recurring behavioral problems may increase stress and serve to erode their relationship over time. If you have an incorrigible child, or a child maybe perhaps with a mental illness. Okay, so that's it. Okay, again, they're talking about negative relationship. Moderating factors, scholars have urged that greater attention be paid to the context in which family processes occur. Marital status is more institutionalized as the context for childbearing, whereas cohabiting relationships are characterized by less commitment and more instability. Okay, whether we like that fact or not, it's been measured with some degree of empirical veracity, we call it. Okay. A moderating factor is child gender. Research has uncovered mixed results. Some found no significant difference in parents' relationship quality is linked to well-being for boys versus girls, whereas other studies have shown that parental discord has a greater effect on boys. So now we finally get down to research used in this study. Okay, but to get there, you have to place this study in the context. Okay, in this study, we extended the literature on parental relationship quality and children's behavior by examining how biological parents' supportiveness in the couple relationship. They've specified what kind of parents they're looking at. It's related to children's behavioral problems through early and middle childhood. We hypothesized, okay, and now we're down to element C, identify the hypothesis of the researchers, if there is one. We hypothesized that the degree of supportiveness in parents' relationships would be negatively related to children's behavioral problems. Right there, there's your hypothesis. This is element C, okay? In other words, okay, your assignment asks you to identify the hypothesis of the researchers. There it is. The more supportiveness, the less behavioral problems. And they put the supportiveness and behavioral problems on, they assign them numerical value on scales, right? Parents will have a stronger effect on children than children have on parents. Now we get down to the sampling used in the study. And that's always going to be in a section, and it's very elegantly done here, called method or data. We use data from the Fragile Families. Okay, it is a longitudinal study of 408,897 births that occurred in 20 large U.S. cities between 1998 and 2000. They weighted the sample. That means that they made there are techniques that they can use to make this sample look like the population. Now, what did they do further to sample it? Okay, they interviewed at 48 hours after the child's birth, and then 1, 3, and 5, and 9 years old. So it took them 10 years, okay, to do this. And of course, it goes down, over time. Okay. We restricted our sample. So this is a random sample. This is a statistical sample. That's what's used here. Okay. To 967 couples who resided from the 1 through 9 year surveys. They represent about 36% of 2,700 couples who were living together in 1 year. Okay, and then they talked about how they constructed their sample. Okay, cases where missing information deferred from the case. Okay, so here you read down and you see what they did. Okay, but we distinguish parents by their marital status at the time of birth. Previous research suggested couples who marry after a child was born are more similar to couples who are unmarried. Okay. Okay, then what else are we looking at? Identify the variables in the study. Okay. Measures. Okay, here you go. Children's behavioral problems. They measured the mother's responses to items from the child behaviors checklist. Okay, and they 0 to 2. Okay, that's how they identify the variables. They developed this variable first, externalizing behavioral problems. Okay, child lies or cheats. Okay, so externalizing behavioral problems is one variable. Okay, that is going to be a dependent variable. In other words, it's going to be the effect of parents' stability. All right. And by externalizing, I mean, what did mothers have to say? Internalizing behavior problems were the mean of the mother's responses to anxiety, depressed, and withdrawn subscales. The child feels he or she has to be perfect. So they're measuring a child's, they're asking the mother a child's self-assessment, internal versus external versus internal. These are the dependent variables. Okay? They are the effects. The independent variable, and whenever you read a good solid measure section, first they deal with the dependent variables, and sometimes they'll identify them as such, but you need to know how to read. Couple supportiveness is the independent variable. In other words, the couple is going to, that's the independent variable that's going to affect these external and internal behavioral problems. Okay? Couple's relationship was constructed from mother father's responses to five items. Parents reported how often their partners fared, expresses love and affection, encourages or helps them, and so forth. Okay. Then you have another category down here. Okay. That has to do with control variables. Okay. What they do is these are things that remain relatively unchanged over time, right? How wealthy a family is, race of family, et cetera, okay? We control for children's gender and their temperament, all right? So, okay, you're going to then read a lot of, you don't need to know about latent growth curve or cross-lag structural equation models, right? Other than to know that these are two techniques that will measure, they compare standard deviations, which is a way that they can measure all of this stuff and compare it where it wouldn't be comparable before. And what they're able to do is come up with an estimate, right? Of the effects of a variable back up here. We're talking couple supportiveness on these internal and external behavior problems. Now, we don't go into the interpretation of this, right? But these models too deeply, okay? But you can read through that if you're statistically minded, right? But that's how we know stuff. That's how we get to where we know stuff. And what we find, read down here, let's go to the discussion. They check for robustness. This is a pretty rigorous test, okay? Let's see. The discussion sheds new light on a key aspect of family functioning for an important domain. Our results suggest that there is a significant, and this word significant means it's statistically significant. Notice I've highlighted this word. Significant doesn't mean, it's just merely that it's important. It means that it is statistically significant. The odds are 95 to, there's 95% chance that this relationship occurs due to something other than chance alone. So there's a relationship between co-resident parents. Dyadic means two, relationship quality. That means whether they're getting along or not. And the level of children's behavioral problems. Found that parents with more supportive relationships had children with fewer behavioral problems for both external and internal behaviors. Although in each case, the effects were small, okay? Recognizing the emphasis on children may affect parents, we evaluate the directionality, so they can kind of switch this. For externalizing behaviors, you found some evidence for both parent and child effects depending on children's ages. But over the years 3 to 5, there's no indication that children affected parents' relationship quality. There are no significant differences by marital status, so cohabiting couples that were stable provided just as much of a chance of lessened behavioral problems than did married couples. Okay, it appears that for the most part, all children, regardless of gender, benefit from parents' ability to love, support, and communicate with each other. Okay? That's the key finding right there. That's the final results. That's the punchline of the entire research. Now, this does not have anything to do with what you personally or I personally know. Okay? This is a pretty rigorous, scientific, statistically significant, representative sample of families that have two people in the family. Yes, they're not all types of family. It's one type of family. So you're going to get in a cul-de-sac in your mind if you go, well, why didn't they analyze this kind of family? Or why didn't they analyze that kind of family? That's not the point of what they were trying to do. They were trying to get at whether there was any sort of connection at all or not, okay, between parental stability and children's, behavioral problems. And they found out that children had fewer behavioral problems with stable parents. Now, yes, they used the modal family in the United States, which is we assume a heterosexual dyad. But the researchers have constructed their research sufficiently rigorously that you could replicate their research. You could do the same thing with same-sex couples, and indeed people have, okay, or other types of families, right? There have been other kinds of research, but this is how you read a journal article, okay? So I wanted to walk through. I've given you basically the answers for this, right? But you needed a walkthrough of this, and I provided this. This video is about 25 minutes long. In the second video, part 2, which I'll be making here over the course of this weekend, it is 13th of September. I'll go over what it means to set up an annotated bibliography, part 2 of this assignment. Peace, and we'll talk to you on Tuesday.